Very good. Thank you for your patience. Call to order 6:06. And we're starting our meeting of the WSESU. And I hate to ask people to wait. We have to make a small adjustment on our agenda, but I want to explain why. In the middle of January, the WSESD board they voted to align their voting day with that of town meeting day. And when they did that, it was a great idea. It made it easy for everyone since we were doing paper ballots. But when they did that, they essentially shortened the term of the WSESU board. And they took away 16 days that we were a seated board. Those 16 days were the difference between the last board concluding their work versus not being able to conclude their work. So ideally, our past board would have wrapped up our work with the superintendent search, come back together, done our work, created an overview, presented it to the public, gotten it posted up online. That didn't happen. Our last meeting was March 1st. It was a 5-hour meeting. We were still in interviewing and working with other people's schedules and accommodating candidates' schedules and whatnot. And so this is only this board's second meeting. And as its second meeting, we can only do work because of open meeting laws when we are together, either here or if it's confidential material in executive session. So we need to, in order for me to offer anything that references, I'm hoping that we will easily and quickly just do a review of some of the information from the previous board's work to just come back out and share. It will just be an overview of what the superintendent search. Carrie had prepared a nice document that was all already public access information. And then we have just at least a short overview that I pulled together of work that was done by the steering committee in executive session, but I felt pretty confident was all should be public information, at least as a starting point. And so we will go into executive session and just review that, and if everyone's in agreement and approval, then we'll be able to come out and share that with you guys. So hopefully it'll be really quick. So with that, I need a motion to go into executive session under VSA 313A, the appointment or employment of public office or employee.
I'll make the motion.
Kelly, second David, thank you. All in favor to go into executive session? Aye. Okay. Thank you. I have to get back to my own document here. Okay. All right, thanks for bearing with us. So do you want to share that?
Why don't you start with yours? Mine is very much.
All right. Well, so basically, Carrie. Well, it is easy access. She basically took everything that we did in our meetings that were public already, and she did a great job. She organized them, highlighted any actions that we're taking, conversation, connected them in links to the agenda and the minutes so that it can be found. And so you can see the process starting last August, from that started with developing, the description for the job, and
Michelle, Michelle, we can't see it in Zoom land.
We're not showing it yet. We're not showing it. We're a little bit. We're struggling here, but we're getting there. Do you want to share?
Yeah, Paul, how do I get it to you?
Yeah, it's good for people to see.
Yours?
Mine.
Email it, I can jump it in.
There we go, here we go.
Yeah, and I will say this is.
All right, hopefully.
It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is.
Wait, just a second.
Stop talking.
Hang on.
We go?
Yeah, you're good.
We're good.
Recording.
Can I talk?
Are you muted?
I am.
Is your
Hello?
Zoom mic on?
No, this isn't on. This is just something else.
Try talking and see that.
Hello?
Here we go.
Lovely.
I think you're good, yeah.
Okay. So again, to recap, this is Carrie and I were both part of the full process on the last board, so this was just our own individual efforts to be able to have something for our second meeting because we know that people want information, and it's just unfortunate that we weren't able to collaborate as a board before the end of our session. So if you want to show Carrie's document first, just so people can visibly see it, we'd like to organize, and I hope that we can pull more information together. This was just, we still need to decipher when meetings happen in executive session. It's because it's around confidential material and just wanting to make sure that we don't violate that confidence, but also can share as much information. So this is just the briefest of overviews. There we go. So Carrie, do you want to tell us anything?
I just kept this as a running document, so I knew what I could share and what I couldn't share.
But all we're
seeing,
all everybody's seeing is your screensaver.
Yeah.
That's what I think. It's pretty.
It's okay. We can. I know. We have a lot of work to do. Well,
so it's actually a rather boring document, let me state that. It is nothing but a compilation of every meeting that we had where I gave a link to the agenda and to the full minutes, and then I pulled out any information around the superintendent search from the minutes and just dumped it in so you didn't have to go into every single document. You could just, the running total of anything that happened around this in public. So it's minutes, it's when I emailed the SD and the Vernon boards, it's links to the job description, it's all the pullouts of all the advertising we did. It's a comparison of our 2020 process to our 2022 outreach process. So it's rather boring and just my idea of fun, of having lots of links and all
I thought it was
information in
great.
one place.
Can I ask a question? Is this the update on the hiring process?
This is the starting point that we have to start at, yeah. We're starting with closing out the last process, recapping where we were. This is only our second session, so we still are very much in the reviewing the process as a new board. That's where we are. This is bureaucracy.
So I just want to be clear, so we're all clear. So moving forward, there's no plan to move forward yet. You're still reviewing the notes from the last process?
That is something I'm getting to.
Okay.
I can't really have a conversation with just you in the middle of this meeting.
Well, that was
but
my question.
yeah, sorry, I was.
The process. Okay, great.
So we're able to offer what we can, which is right now a review of some information on what got us to this point. And that was sort of my right away point was we ended on the last day, we were still in interviews. And so that final day that the board met, we were still in interviews, and so there was no closure with that final board. We were literally in a 5-hour meeting on the last day. And so this board has the public portion from last time and about a 2-hour session of beginning to regroup and get the information and to start the process of reviewing it with a brand new board. It's a lot of information. It was 9 weeks of work, and there's many candidates and et cetera. So it's quite a bit of work, and this is us trying to get as much information together to figure out what we can do next. So this is what we can share, and that's what I'm offering you. That's what I've got for you today. And so I'm gonna move on. As Carrie said, her piece outlines all of the public meetings that covers about 9 months of work. And I just had a recap of what happened with our superintendent search steering committee. It was developed.
Paul's gonna put it up.
I didn't know if they could see it, so I just was gonna keep moving.
They can see, you want to.
Oh, do you wanna put that up then?
Okay, and Ally West has a hand up.
Okay. Well, we're not there. We'll finish this and then people can ask questions. This was really as a work meeting. This isn't a regularly scheduled meeting. This is our work session, and I was urged to at least offer any kind of update, and so I said I can schedule it. That's fine. Like, we'll share what we can and let you guys know what we're doing. So the Superintendent Search Steering Committee was developed per the recommendation of our board consultant, Mark Andrews. This was determined as best approach given the restrictions posed by the pandemic, a compressed timeline, and utilizing past superintendent search feedback from prior participants. Nominations were solicited by board members and their individual outreach methods. The committee was comprised of 14 representatives from our neighboring towns and schools within the SU and represented various demographics. They were charged specifically in writing with this work: to serve as an advisory committee to the WSESU Board of Directors, to conduct a screening of candidates presented to the committee by the search consultant. From the initial screening, determine a reasonable number of candidates to interview based on qualifications of desired candidates identified through the 2020 vision for the next WSESU superintendent document. That can also be found online. They were to participate in the development of first round interview questions. Following the candidates interview, identify individuals who meet these qualifications and forward their names to the WSESU Board of School Directors for interview and consideration, and to maintain confidentiality during the search process. 9 applications were presented to the search committee for review. The committee was advised on best practice for review. Applicants were reviewed and analyzed in 9 categories. Members used a pro-con method to share their feedback. All members participated before the committee took to vote. Candidates were moved forward throughout the process by winning a majority vote. Key topics were then identified by the steering committee that were candidate specific for the WSESU board to engage in a more in-depth interview review and evaluation. In addition, interviewees were assessed on overall work history, qualifications, relevant experience, reference and background check, as well as personal professional ideology. This board concluded their work based on all available information, individual assessment, and with the guidance of a consultant to advise on areas of professional competencies outside the scope of board members' knowledge. The board was unable to successfully reach consensus with all parties before their time as a duly constituted board concluded. So that was basically the process of our steering committee. And I wanted to share, which I see you coming. And I was just going to share that I had questions because I had shared at the last meeting. I said that some of the process was complicated, and so I'm just going to say this is just where I am, and I know that this board is going to take up this consideration seriously. But as the work of the steering committee concluded, it became apparent in both practice and confidential reporting that there were concerns that did not secure a fair process for all applicants to be reviewed, assessed, and deliberated on. And that I believe that this board is charged with the responsibility to oversee an independent evaluation to assess these concerns. And these concerns did not immediately impact the assessment of the final candidates or influence the decision of the last sitting WSESU board. Okay. That was a lot of words, and I wish it was in a pretty, like a pretty slideshow. It would have been a lot easier to probably take in. So, questions? Go ahead, Paul. You had
Ally
some.
West has a question.
Sure.
Hi, sorry, I had to figure out how to unmute myself. I just need clarification here. You're saying that for the last 9 months that we have been doing this research, but the 16 days, the little 16 days between the 2 boards is what completely clumped you and we couldn't make a decision? Like, you didn't realize this was happening?
No, I didn't say that.
Wait, ma'am, I'm not done, and I'm not being sarcastic, a little bit. But my question is, in 9 months, Mark Spino has not proven that he is a perfect candidate for this position. Do you want to go ahead and say yes or no right now?
I didn't hear a question that's appropriate or that I could answer. I'm not here to talk about any candidates. I wouldn't talk about personnel in a meeting. That's not acceptable. It's not allowed. I think you misheard me as I explained. Because of the missing the last 2.5 weeks of our session, we were not able to wrap up our work and present it to the public. That was what I said.
In 9.5 months. 9 months, but you didn't have that last 2.5
Yeah,
weeks.
it's okay.
I will mute myself
Okay.
now.
Thank you.
But, wow.
I have a question.
Go ahead, yeah.
So, I guess moving forward, I'm just, I'm kind of remembering what you're saying, the last piece of what you're saying that you're charged with, is to do an independent study on the process?
No, that's a separate issue, but I just shared that, that on top of all of the work that we have to do, that there were issues that have been raised since we concluded, that were becoming apparent, that steering committee members expressed some concerns and around fair process, and so I think that we have an obligation to, not us, but to outsource and have someone independently review that to ensure that we have a fair process set up for all of our applicants.
So that's separate.
That
from
is separate.
Okay.
I felt like that needed to be shared because I didn't want it to be shared in a newspaper instead, since I had knowledge of this, and it is important. It's important to, if you can find out that you could have done better, to correct course and to do better for the future. That's
Okay.
important.
So moving forward in the hiring process, are you opening up the search again, or are you utilizing the candidates that you have?
That's to be determined. We've had 2 hours as a new board to review the entire process and candidates and all of the applicants.
So can I just respond? So I was on the SU board, but I wasn't in the search committee, the smaller subgroup. So there were some details that I was not, were not available to me because I wasn't part of that. And also we now have based on the process, we have 2 new people on the board. And so I understand that it's frustrating to the public. It's been a very challenging process, of course, not just for us, but for the public as well. And we recognize that. So I hope that we recognize that and we appreciate that. But part of this is we have to, in order for us as a board to make any decisions, to make any choices, to make, whatever it is we're going to do that needs to happen, we understand the emergence of this situation. But in order for that to happen, the 2 people I at least was in part of, in the executive session parts. But there are 2 new board members who had they had no interaction with the SU board because they weren't even on it. So those 2, the last time we spent some time kind of updating, talking about things, trying to figure out what do we need to do, going forward. And that's really part of what we're doing, is we're trying to make sure that everyone in the group understands where we were, how we got there, what we need to do now, and that's, we understand that this is a big responsibility and there are people who need to have an answer. They need to know how things are going to move forward. But with that, we have to kind of educate the people who weren't in there, and I've had to be educated on some of the things that I wasn't present for. And so I just wanted you to know that we are taking this seriously. We don't take this lightly. It's a big responsibility.
I definitely feel for you. I acknowledge that the old WSESU board was irresponsible in not making a decision and handing it over to a new board. That's really bad practice.
Well, I would say,
not really fair. I know you.
I can certainly understand from an outside perspective. But I know you've talked about being on a board. I believe you are on a board now in some capacity. So perhaps you can understand if you've had to deal with personnel issues in any way.
I have.
So there are things that, of course, you have to, you can't divulge. You can't.
I understand that,
and some of that is what we're running up against.
Yeah, I just want to know how
we have to.
If there was a recommendation made. To
The former board. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but just to sum it up, the former board did conclude their work. They were not able to find a consensus with all involved parties. So the board made a decision, and then the conversation had to end because we could no longer meet. So that's how that ended.
Because there were new people because of the election.
No, it wasn't. It was that we were not able to reach a consensus with all involved parties. And so that means identifying all involved parties. So for any final candidates, those conversations, they had to cease, they stopped because there was no longer a board. And so being able to even pick up and move on forward with that, first there's some catching up that needs to be done, but it is exactly that. We had to roll over and forward on and say, does this board want to resume with the work that board left off, which means reaching out to candidates, determining if they're still eligible, if this board deciding if they're eligible and want to work with them, reaching out and finding out if candidates are still interested in being considered. It was handed over. We concluded our work to the best of our ability. Once that door closed, there was no more room for conversation around negotiation. If it wasn't accepted as it was, then we were at a stall until the meeting came back together. And it would have been nice if we could have moved forward, if we could have had these few weeks to have, I would have loved to have had those 16 days because it would have, I think, been concluded.
Thank you. Andy has a question.
Actually, who's next in line first? You've had your hand up for a little bit.
It's not me, it's people online.
Yeah.
I think Andy was first.
If he has his hand up first, that's fine. Mhm. So I'm letting you keep an eye on who the order, because Andy, go ahead.
Thank you. So, thank you for explaining, helping us to understand the confusion there and unscrambling that. It sounds really confusing, but thank you for explaining that and owning some of it. So regardless of all that, I mean, I think it would be easy to sit here and start, ripping the board or the boards and have a lot of blame, but that's not going to get us very far. So we're hours away from April 1st. Finding a superintendent is a time-consuming thing. Finding a good qualified superintendent is even more difficult, and generally not commenced in April. So I think it's safe to say that we're at a crisis point, or certainly at the beginning of a crisis. It's safe to assume that there's not going to be adequate time to conduct the search fully as one would like and come up with a qualified candidate to run a school system as large as ours and as complex as ours. So I think for a lot of people who are from students, parents, teachers, administrators, on and on, there's a sense of panic. Okay, and so I guess sitting here now trying to figure out, so this has gotten a lot of interest from the community. Mm-hmm. I think it's a wonderful thing. We have students interested, we have parents interested, we have community members, we have new board members, we have administrators, a lot of commitment here. So, I mean, the way forward is to figure out how to facilitate that. How to facilitate this as a community effort to get our system the best superintendent to move us forward for the next several years in this very important work. So I hope that we don't have time right now to figure out what went wrong, but that figure out. So the last two searches, I would say, were pretty unsuccessful. So this will be the third. So let's do it differently. Because we know those two didn't work. Let's do it differently. Let's do it successfully, so we can wind up with the superintendent who's going to serve our kids for the next several years. And I think the way to do it successfully now is to say, well, we got a lot of people. We have community involvement. Man, that is great. We have kids involved. Let's facilitate that. Let's get as much involvement as we can to get the best candidate, and not let it fall on the 5 of you and on the screening committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Contribution.
And I just want to ask, I know that people are asking questions, but I do want to try to keep our questions and comments to within a 2-minute window. This is actually, this was a work session so that we can hurry up and get to the next part and get some decisions made and get through things and figure out where we stand. So I want to answer questions, but if I don't have an answer, if it can't be answered, we can't talk about confidential information. So I just ask that people understand that for the sake of being timely in their answer. Go ahead.
Hi, I've been in this community my whole life, and I've been on various boards for over 30 years. elected position, and I commend you so much for being on the board. And I am still in an elected position. But I know that myself, it's always been about the community, what the community wants, what the people want. And I put that first. I put who's been in this community for that long, how much they care, how much they do. But I do understand the board situation. I understand that it's very difficult and that you have to make a difficult decision. So going forward, how much longer do you think this will take to come to a conclusion?
I really would love to have the answer to that question.
Well,
my kids miss me, so.
I bet they do. I know what a difficult job you have.
Yeah.
And I just commend Mark Spino for what he's done, because I know how wonderful he is with children and what he's done for this community. But I also give the board some support too. But
Thank
I
you.
really hope you deeply, deeply listen to what the community has to say. Because I, as an elected official, I do local community first. And that's all I have to say.
I'd like to say that we would love to say, we'll have something in 2 weeks, we'll have something,
Right.
and we would like that, I'm not sure if it would be understood as appropriate for me to say as much as, but we certainly do want to have this sort of matter concluded so we can get to some resolution, we can move forward. We have other things in the district that we need to deal with.
Oh,
The district, the SU,
absolutely.
that's.
The board is
so
not a
we
simple
are-
thing, I know that.
We are looking forward to having some sort of resolution in this matter. I would hesitate to say, to put a particular time.
Another just question I have earlier when you were talking earlier, are you saying you are getting like another committee to also look into it? Did
No, I just know, but I wanted to acknowledge that happened because I know that it's been brought up and it's being communicated, and I've had newspaper people, and I'm like, I wanted to hear from us. We know about it, we're not ignoring it, it's on the to-do list. This is more important and pressing, I do think. But I would hope that we could learn and continue to improve our process, because if we need to improve our process for the future, then that's also our job. But that's just, it's on the list. It's on the to-do list, yeah.
Anna Rosinski has her hand up on Zoom land. Anna, go
Thank
ahead.
you. Thank you from Zoom land. So I'll be very brief, I promise. But I just wanted to, I'm hoping that one of the aims, I'm hoping tonight, is to develop a timeline that we can have those answers as far as what the next steps will be. I think it's really important to move forward, as everyone had said, and I think in the absence of an individual, having those dates for the public to hear and expect holds everyone accountable, and I think it's the first step towards positive action. So I'd like to hope that that's on the agenda moving forward.
Thank you.
Peggy Maxfield has a hand up.
Thank you, Paul. My name's Peggy Maxfield, and I teach math at BAMS. I'm also the president of Windham Southeast Education Association. And as I listened, Michelle and Carrie, to you sharing your process, I feel that I really do need to point out that even though you have hired a consultant, the consultant never recommended contacting the association for representation in this process, nor did any of the board members, as they reached out to their own constituents, reach out to the association, which represents nearly 400 of the employees in the district. So as you consider your next steps, I sincerely hope and ask that you include WSEA, the administration, and the school communities in an expedited process to determine the best superintendent for the future of this district. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other questions.
No,
Steve.
So I guess one comment, Steve Perrin, principal of the high school. And, I can appreciate the board's dilemma. You had a new board, you had an old board, and I don't want to get into that, but I guess I want to highlight that not only is the lack of a superintendent hurting the district as a whole, it's greatly impacting Green Street School and BUHS. Right now, we are trying to post positions. We cannot post an assistant principal position until we have some resolution. That means that good candidates, good young candidates, are finding positions elsewhere. I urge the board to set a timeline this evening so so we can resolve hiring practices across the district. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jess Earp. I teach at BAMS and I'm a parent. I'm a Vernon student. And your job as elected officials is to make sure that our schools can run. You're not the experts in education any more than you're experts in public health or financial management. And so the dismissal of the carefully contemplated and publicly declared support of Mark Spino by over 100 educators and every single member of our administrative team as cronyism is nothing short of an insult.
Exactly.
This continued public narrative that we don't hire based on public opinion completely disregards our daily lived experience for what it takes to make our schools run, our countless hours of professional development, and our higher level degrees in education. This board is not allowing our schools to run because we don't have a leader coming up on 3 years of the worst time in public education. We have laws coming from the state about inclusion. We are trying to update our MTSS models. All of these require strong leaders, a vision from the top, and we don't have it. Your responsibility is to make sure our schools can run, and that's a responsibility you undertook when you put your name on the ballot, and you need to take that seriously.
Okay.
Michelle, if I could just,
Yeah.
also encourage you to consider that we talked about our budget period, worked closely with you as the business administrator. We've got a very unique time in terms of resources and support. And it's absolutely needed in terms of coming out of the pandemic. And the recovery plan goals that we've talked about, it drove our budget, it drove so much of our planning. I guess the point I want to share is similar to what has just been shared, which is there's urgency around creating master schedule, like tomorrow, bringing in all of these resources. You know it's 30 new positions. They need to be integrated into that schedule. They need to be engaged with curriculum materials, the choice of a curriculum, things we were just talking about yesterday at our central office meeting. These are things that are today, tomorrow, and next week, and if we don't execute, we won't be in as good shape as we should be for next September, and that has implications, right down the line. So I just want to sort of reiterate again, I sort of shared this at the supervisory union meeting, from an operational point of view. It comes down to issuing a lot of purchase orders, making commitments with our vendors and our partners and our employees. Now is the time that we need to move. Mark has been there. And you know that, you've heard it. He's widely respected. He is ready to go. And you've heard the confidence that the system has in his ability to lead. So I would encourage you to take that into consideration.
Christy again has a comment. Christy, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I apologize, I'm joining late, so if this has already been said, I'm sorry. I wanted to just share how excited I am that there's so many people participating in this conversation. I have been one of the few people who have attended SU meetings in the past, and there are literally maybe 1 or 2 members from the public. And the SU board in general, it hasn't been a board that has been very supportive. And so while I totally hear everyone's concerns, it's a little frustrating for me, given that there hasn't been, I think, the level of support and participation in the past, and understanding, or at least understanding of the difference between what kinds of decisions the SU board makes versus the regular the district school board. So I hope that, given all of the things that are difficult right now as the district and the board make their choices about how they move forward, that we continue to support this board. They need our participation and they need our support. I think, I hope that happens. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
One more. Gilbert Green's iPhone has a question or comment.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, it seems like there seems to be this crisis, and I just wanted to know indeed whether or not Mark is going to be continuing to be the superintendent. Is that the reason why there's such an immediate crisis? Is he not going to be the superintendent next year? I don't understand.
Currently, Mark has a 1-year interim contract that expires on June 30th.
June 3rd?
June 30th.
Of this year?
The end of the month, yeah. So.
Was he offered another position, or?
That's not something that this board can acknowledge or speak to. So if I can, I will thank everybody. I do want you guys to know. There's someone else. Go ahead,
You
Sarah.
can't acknowledge or speak to it, but I can. And I want to acknowledge and take a minute to talk about how awkward this is for Mark Spino.
I don't think that you should speak for Mark Spino.
I think that I can
It's
speak.
okay.
Like, this has got to be, like, does any of us want to be sitting where he is right now?
No.
The guy is so professional. He's just so stand-up. And he has been put through the ringer
Yes.
by a board that people are asking us to support.
Exactly.
But he had 1 million people up here giving him so much support, and he's got, for whatever reasons, which to the public at this point look quite personal, to be honest. We have no information, and it looks like you all have, you, David, you all have little like vendettas or something weirdly awkward around this. And it's really uncomfortable for the public, because we don't know what's going on in your little, that thing that happened at the beginning, which was like, really?
We shared everything that went on in there.
Whatever. Again,
It's
I'm
not
gonna
whatever.
say what
I'm
I
giving you
said.
an answer
No,
to your question.
you can't talk to me when I'm talking at this. That's another thing. You have to read Robert's rules. You have got to learn how to run a board meeting, lady.
Okay, it's my second meeting.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what the thing that you guys love to say? I'm so new here. Like, did Mr. Spino ever say that on his first day? Oh, I'm just so new here. I just stepped in for Andy, who just like ditched us. But I'm so new here, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, no, like stop saying that. It's embarrassing. Stop saying you're new. Read the minutes, get up to speed, you ran for a position, do it. Don't keep telling us you're new. It wasn't like, I'm gonna run for the board and I'm gonna tell everybody I'm just really new. Like, no, stop being new.
Doing your job.
And yeah, do your job and thank Mr. Spino for everything he's done. And he was offered a position, and he said no because it had the word interim before it. And that was discussed at the last meeting in public. I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know. Take the word interim away. Offer the guy a position. That's what everybody's begging you to do at this point, but we're like mired in process. That's what you're doing. You're miring us in some process where you have to have private conversations, and the rest of us are really frustrated. And poor Mr. Spino, is sitting here with Andy behind him in a super awkward, embarrassing moment, with a former principal having to beg you to facilitate with the community. Please! And look at me like that. You are divisive in this community. The only people in the world that can get 600 people to come out to the BOHS is you guys. This never happened before in the history of this town, and I've been here for 50 some odd years. Ever. You guys did that.
Thank you. You've already spoken, and this was supposed to be 10 minutes, and this is what our time was for. Ben, I'm not going to say no to you. Go ahead.
I would like to ask when the students' lives come into play. When do they come into consideration? If we can get hundreds of students to support one person, to lead us, to continue to lead us, how can that so comfortably be dismissed? How can we feel heard? How can we feel supported by our own school board if we're treated like this?
So thank you for asking that honest question. And I want to respond to it because I would have loved to have seen a student presence in this process. That was the COVID spike that came in. I think that that was appropriate, and that was part of some of the goals we intended in the beginning, to have a lot more public access that represented different demographics. I think that that's important. And ultimately, this document that was shared tonight reviewed the process. There's only 5 people that were, 5 people and a consultant to go over that went through all of these categories, all of the discussions, to make this assessment, to ask difficult questions, to push back on the questions that were forwarded by a larger group of a steering committee. And we got the answers that we got, and we made the best decision we could on that day, and then that board ended, and that conversation ended. And it's really that simple. And it's not, I hear everyone in this space, I respect everyone's right to their opinion. I want everyone who's listening, because I know people will be listening, to know that I also hear the voices of the people that do not feel that they have the space to stand up and speak out loud. I've also been inundated by other emails that have let me know that they don't feel that they can be public. They don't feel that they can show their face because it's not the popular choice right now, because they work in our district. And so we will do this and be fair in process, as we have been this entire time, to do our very best to do what we're supposed to do, which is make the best choice for our schools. But it's when we get asked questions, when you're putting it on as saying, listen to what we want in this space, you are dismissing 25,000 other people. And so we're doing our best to represent everybody, and we're taking ourselves out of it and taking opinions out of it and going through, it was literally, I explained, there was a pro and con, there was a process and a system of reason and going back and forth. And we're going to continue to go forward and do the best we can to work with the material that we already have and to communicate with applicants and see where we stand. And that's where we are today. And that's what we're going to do, and we'd like to get to work. And so I'm going to end public comment because it was supposed to be 10 minutes and it's been over an hour.
Where did it say that it was 10 minutes?
Where does it say
I said that at the beginning of the meeting. I actually said that at the beginning of the meeting.
Ask another question.
I said,
I've been on boards my entire life, and you do not shut people out. If they have a question, you answer it for them. If it ends up being an hour and a half, it's an hour and a half. That's what you are there for. I am on boards, I've been on them for years and years and years. You do not put people off. You let them ask questions. One person asks, they can't ask another question? I think that is outrageous. That's what we are here for, to get some questions. You are working for us. I am sorry. And that's what it's about, working for the community. So you're going to say to Mark Spino, okay, you can do intern 1 more year until we find what we want. Bye. That is outrageous. I am sorry. And that's
Shameful.
it.
Well, I'll say that we haven't,
It's embarrassing.
this board here has not had the opportunity.
I have heard that, I know that, but you're a new board, you step up, like she said. Stop saying I'm new. Guess what, you're new, you get there, you find it, you get your things, and then you do your job, new or not.
Move forward. We need to move forward, and we need to be able to have discussion.
The 10 minutes is outrageous.
okay.
And you say that you respect people's opinions, but all you did was roll your eyes at her the whole time she was talking.
I did not roll my eyes, but I also deserve to be respected, and I don't deserve to be screamed at.
Everybody-
Yes, you do, and I apologize for that. I have
Every person that you have disagreed with,
So
you rolled your
everyone,
eyes.
at this point, we're gonna call this back into
Exactly.
order. Okay, this doesn't feel like a board meeting.
Yeah.
And
You need to learn what board
there are
meeting
2
is then.
people that wanna speak. New people?
We'll repeat one new. Robin is new. Robin, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a beat in this meeting, which feels like it's becoming another sort of vitriol-filled mob. And recognize that everyone here, every single person that has showed up to this meeting, every single board member, every single teacher and student that's there is there for the same unified purpose. Everybody wants a good superintendent to run our district. And I recognize that it's very disconcerting when the process does not happen smoothly, as it has not. But I just want everyone to remember, we all are members of the same community. We're all people that we're gonna see, walking in the grocery store, and everyone is here because they want to spend their free time making a better school system for our kids. So I would just love if the mood of this meeting could return to conversation that feels constructive. I also want to say that just like in the masking forum, there's a very specific point of view that feels very empowered in these meetings, and it's very silencing for anyone who doesn't agree. So it creates the illusion that everyone feels the same way, but that is not the case. And a lot of folks who might be feeling more support of the board than what is visible in this meeting are not the ones who are coming up and speaking right now. But that doesn't mean that they're not there, and I know there are people who, support the board's work that work in schools and don't feel safe to speak in this meeting. So I just want everyone to recognize that there's a really wide variety of experiences, but it doesn't mean that anyone here is not doing it for the best of our students and our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Any other new comments?
No new.
Okay. Okay. I have to pull up my numbers. Okay.
Public comment.
What's that?
We had public comment.
Right. That was not questions, that was comment. So I am, at this time, our board is going to go into executive session so that we can continue to review applicants and candidates and viable information. I know, I'm explaining. Thank you, Kelly. So with that motion that we move to executive session or VSA 313A, the appointment or employment of public officer or employee, provided that the public body shall make a final decision to hire or appoint a public officer or employee in an open meeting and shall explain the reasons for its final decision during open meeting. Do I have so moved by David? Do I have a second? Second? All in favor? Aye. Okay.